How guarding the sense doors leads gradually to jhana. The path to jhana unfolds naturally when the foundations of the mind are properly established. The Buddha did not describe jhana as something manufactured by force or technical concentration. Instead, he described it as the natural maturation of a mind that has become restrained, clear, and inwardly collected. Guarding the sense doors is therefore not a minor preliminary discipline, but the very soil from which deep meditation grows. When the senses are left unguarded, the mind constantly moves outward. Every sight, sound, smell, taste, bodily sensation, and thought becomes an invitation for fascination. The mind grasps, judges, compares, desires, and resists. Even when the practitioner sits down to meditate, the mind continues to wander through impressions accumulated throughout the day. In such a condition, stillness is difficult because the mind has been trained to run outward toward stimulation. Guarding the sense doors interrupts this habit. The practitioner begins to observe experience at the point where perception arises. Instead of automatically engaging with what is seen or heard, one maintains composure. Forms are seen, sounds are heard, sensations are felt, yet the mind refrains from grasping their details and stories. This simple shift has profound consequences. When fascination with sensory objects weakens, agitation begins to fade. The mind gradually becomes less reactive. Situations that previously triggered strong emotional responses now pass more lightly. Praise and blame lose some of their power. Pleasant and unpleasant experiences are recognized without being magnified into elaborate mental narratives. This quiet composure creates the first layer of inner stability. The mind becomes less scattered because it is no longer chasing countless external impressions. Instead of being pulled outward by the senses, awareness begins to settle within itself. From this stability arises a sense of seclusion. The practitioner may still live in the world and perform daily responsibilities, yet inwardly there is a growing sense of distance from the constant movement of sensory life. Experiences continue to arise, but they no longer dominate the mind. This inner seclusion is the beginning of true meditation. As seclusion deepens, the mind naturally discovers a subtle form of happiness. This happiness does not come from acquiring pleasant experiences, but from the absence of disturbance. The quiet relief that arises when the mind is no longer constantly agitated becomes deeply satisfying. It is the happiness of simplicity and inward composure. This inner contentment plays an essential role in the development of jhana. The mind no longer feels compelled to search for stimulation because it has discovered a more stable form of well-being. With the senses guarded and the mind inwardly at ease, attention begins to gather. At first, this gathering is gentle. The mind remains aware of its chosen meditation object without excessive effort. Distractions may still appear, but they no longer carry the same force. Each time attention returns to the present moment, it does so more easily. Gradually, the scattered energies of consciousness collect into a unified flow. The mind becomes steady and luminous. Thoughts grow quieter. The body relaxes deeply. Joy and tranquility begin to arise, not as emotional excitement, but as a refined sense of uplift and serenity. This is the threshold where the first jhana appears. In the early discourses, the Buddha described the first jhana as a state born of seclusion, accompanied by joy and happiness. The phrase, "born of seclusion," is crucial. Jhana arises precisely because the mind has withdrawn from the turbulence of sensual involvement. It is not forced into existence by concentration techniques, but emerges naturally when the conditions are present. As the practitioner becomes familiar with this collected state, the mind grows even more tranquil. The initial activity of thought fades, and the joy becomes calmer and more refined. This maturation leads naturally to the deeper jhanas, where serenity and clarity deepen further. The entire process can be understood as a gradual purification of the mind's relationship with experience. Guarding the sense doors prevents the mind from becoming entangled in sensory fascination. This restraint leads to inner seclusion. Seclusion gives rise to calm happiness. From calm happiness, the mind gathers into unified attention. From unified attention, the profound stillness of jhana unfolds. Seen in this light, the practice is remarkably simple. Instead of chasing increasingly complex meditation techniques, the practitioner returns again and again to the foundation of awareness. One guards the senses, observes the arising of desire and aversion, and gently withdraws from the habit of grasping experience. With patience and continuity, the mind begins to rediscover its natural equilibrium. What initially feels like discipline gradually becomes freedom. The senses continue to function, the world continues to appear, yet the mind remains unshaken. In this stillness, the deeper dimensions of meditation become accessible. Jhana is no longer a distant goal, but the natural resting place of a mind that has learned to live quietly within itself.
The meaning of guarding the sense doors. Guarding the sense doors, Pali, Indriya Samvara, is one of the fundamental disciplines taught by the Buddha. It refers to maintaining restraint and clarity in relation to the 6 sense faculties: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. These senses are the gateways through which experience enters consciousness. The Buddha repeatedly explained that suffering arises not merely from contact with the senses, but from grasping the signs and details of sensory objects. When one is careless with perception, craving and aversion arise. A typical formula from the early suttas states, "When one sees a form with the eye, one does not grasp at its signs and features. If the faculty were left unguarded, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief would invade. Therefore, one practices restraint and guards the faculty of sight." The same principle applies to all 6 sense bases. Guarding the senses is therefore not repression or suppression. It is understanding the danger of fascination with sensory experience and maintaining a stable awareness that prevents the mind from becoming entangled. In the gradual training described in many discourses, this discipline appears before deep meditation, because without restraint, the mind remains scattered and incapable of entering jhana. Why sense restraint is essential for jhana. The mind becomes disturbed when it constantly pursues pleasant sights, sounds, and thoughts. The Buddha explained that unrestrained senses lead to unwholesome mental states, while restraint creates inner ease and stability. This is why the gradual path described in the suttas follows a clear sequence: ethical conduct, guarding the sense doors, mindfulness and clear comprehension, contentment and simplicity, seclusion, jhana. Without guarding the senses, meditation becomes a struggle because the mind continues to replay impressions of the world. The Hillside Hermitage teaching emphasizes that jhana does not arise from manipulating meditation techniques, but from establishing a mind that is already restrained and withdrawn from sensual fascination. Sense restraint, therefore, protects the mind from the constant stimulation that fuels craving. The 6 sense doors. The Buddha identified 6 internal faculties and their corresponding objects: eye, visible forms; ear, sounds; nose, smells; tongue, tastes; body, tactile sensations; mind, thoughts, emotions, and ideas. Guarding the sense doors means remaining aware of how contact at these 6 points triggers craving, aversion, or distraction. The practitioner learns to recognize the moment when perception turns into mental proliferation.
Exercise. Guarding the sense doors in daily life. Guarding the sense doors is not merely a meditation technique. It is a way of living with awareness. The practitioner learns to recognize how the mind is constantly pulled outward through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Every moment of unguarded sense contact easily becomes a doorway for distraction, craving, irritation, and restlessness. Guarding the senses, therefore, means protecting the clarity of the mind. A simple and powerful exercise is to begin observing the moment when impulses arise. Sit quietly for a few minutes and establish present moment awareness. Feel the body sitting. Notice the breath moving naturally. Then watch the mind. Soon, an urge will appear. You may feel the impulse to check your emails. Perhaps the thought arises to look at YouTube for a moment. The mind may start searching for stimulation, for something new, something interesting, something pleasurable. Restlessness begins to appear as a subtle discomfort, a feeling that something should be done. At that exact moment, the training begins. Instead of following the impulse, simply observe it. Notice how the urge appears as a sensation in the mind. It may feel like pressure, curiosity, excitement, or mild anxiety. The key is not to suppress it and not to obey it. Simply remain aware. Say silently to yourself, "This is an urge." Observe how the urge grows, changes, and eventually fades if it is not fed. By doing this repeatedly, you begin to understand something very important. The mind constantly produces impulses, but you do not have to follow them. Guarding the sense doors means recognizing the impulse before it turns into action. Over time, you will begin to see the entire process. Sense contact leads to feeling. Feeling leads to craving. Craving leads to action. If awareness is present early enough, the chain is interrupted. In daily life, this practice can be applied everywhere. When walking past a shop window, notice the desire to look longer. When hearing a conversation, notice the urge to listen or to judge. When feeling bored, notice the impulse to reach for the phone. Each of these moments is an opportunity to guard the senses. The goal is not withdrawal from life, but clarity. The mind becomes quiet because it is no longer constantly chasing stimulation. Right speech as protection of the mind. Guarding the sense doors naturally extends into speech. Words are not neutral. Speech shapes the mind and influences the mental atmosphere in which we live. Right speech means speaking in a way that supports clarity and harmlessness. The Buddha described 4 kinds of speech that should be abandoned: false speech, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. False speech weakens the mind because it creates inner conflict. When what is said does not match reality, the mind loses stability. Divisive speech creates separation between people and feeds resentment. Harsh speech arises from irritation and strengthens anger. Idle chatter, though often harmless on the surface, easily disperses the mind and drains attention. The practice is simple. Before speaking, pause for a brief moment and ask yourself whether the words are true, beneficial, and appropriate for the situation. Speech that arises from calm awareness tends to be measured and meaningful. A practitioner will gradually discover that silence often protects the mind better than unnecessary conversation. When speech is used carefully, it becomes a continuation of mindfulness rather than an interruption of it. Appropriate eating at appropriate times. Another important support for guarding the senses is moderation in eating. Food influences the body and the mind more strongly than most people realize. Heavy or excessive eating often produces dullness, lethargy, and agitation. The early Buddhist training recommends eating at appropriate times and in appropriate quantities. Traditionally, this means taking the main meal earlier in the day and avoiding unnecessary eating in the evening. Even if one does not follow this rule strictly, the principle behind it remains valuable. Before eating, pause and reflect on the purpose of food. Food is taken to sustain the body, to maintain health, and to support the practice. It is not taken merely for entertainment or emotional comfort. During the meal, eat slowly and with awareness. Notice the taste of the food and the sensation of the body receiving nourishment. Observe when the feeling of hunger disappears and stop before the body becomes heavy. When eating is done with mindfulness and restraint, the body feels lighter and the mind becomes clearer. The practice of guarding the sense doors is therefore supported not only in meditation, but also in simple daily actions such as speaking and eating. Through these small disciplines, the practitioner gradually builds a mind that is stable, alert, and capable of deeper concentration. Guarding the sense doors is not a technique. It is a way of living with awareness. At every moment, the world reaches inward through the eyes, ears, body, and mind. Forms, sounds, sensations, and thoughts continuously call for attention. The untrained mind follows these movements automatically, pulled outward into distraction, craving, and restlessness. The practitioner learns to remain still within this movement. Sit quietly. Feel the body resting. Notice the weight, the contact with the ground, the simple fact of being here. Let the breath move naturally, without control. Nothing needs to be changed. Now, observe the mind. Soon, something will arise. A thought, an impulse, a subtle urge to do something. Perhaps the desire to check your phone, to look at something, to move, or to escape the stillness. This is the moment of training. Instead of following the impulse, pause. Do not suppress it and do not act on it. Simply observe. Say silently to yourself, "This is an urge." Watch it carefully. Notice how it appears. It may feel like pressure, curiosity, excitement, or mild discomfort. See how it changes. See how it moves. See how it fades when it is not fed. Through this observation, understanding begins to develop. The mind produces impulses continuously, but you do not have to follow them. Sense contact leads to feeling. Feeling leads to craving. Craving leads to action. When awareness is present, this chain can be interrupted. This practice extends into daily life. When walking past something interesting, notice the urge to look longer. When hearing a conversation, notice the impulse to engage or to judge. When boredom appears, notice the movement toward distraction. Each of these moments is an opportunity to remain aware. Guarding the sense doors is not withdrawal from life, it is clarity within it. As the practice deepens, the mind no longer chases every impulse. It becomes quieter, more stable, and more collected. From this collectedness, deeper understanding and concentration naturally arise.